Very excited to welcome our keynote speaker, Karen X. Cheng, to the stage. Karen is a director known for sharing her creative experiments on Instagram at Karen X. Cheng, followed by over 1 million people. She works closely with tech companies including Meta, DALL-E, Snapchat, and Adobe on their latest products, finding innovative and creative uses to inspire creators. She's been named Inc. 30 Under 30 and Adweek's Creative 100 for her work. She's also just awesome and completely inspires me, but that wasn't part of her bio. We've got an intro reel showcasing her work, some of which we were going to get into and go through her work. So let's get into her reel and then we'll welcome her to the stage. Amazing. Very happy to have you here today. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and speak to our audience.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for that intro.
Oh, yeah, absolute pleasure. So format of this, I think the best way for us to kind of have this conversation is through your work and kind of taking a bit of a deep dive for our audience into your process, your thinking, how you kind of come up with your ideas and how you kind of get them out there into the world. Is that cool? Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Well, then I think we should start with the first one, and we can then deep dive into into that process. So I've got this down here as Art Portal. I don't know if you want to give it a little bit of an overview before we show the audience what it is.
You can play it.
Yeah, let's play it. Amazing. So, first question, how do you come up with ideas like that to kind of collaborate with brands and tech? Can you take us right the way back to the start of the process? Because for me, that is such a novel and unique and interesting kind of treatment. I wouldn't even know how you kind of get there. So, can you just take us right the way back to the beginning with a project like that?
Yeah. So this piece was for Insta360. They're a camera company. They're the camera that I used that was at the end of a very long pole. And the way that I like to work with brands is I like to do a bunch of personal projects just to kind of get an inventory of ideas that I have in my head. And then when a brand comes to me, the first thing I try to do is I try to play matchmaker between my personal projects or things that I want to do and the brand brief. And so oftentimes when a brand will come to me and they're like, we want this very specific thing. And I'll often be like, how about we make a tweak and do this other thing, but I'll fit it into your brand objective in this way. And that's how I do the best brand work. Otherwise, if I'm just following the brand brief, completely prescriptively, the content will end up being kind of dry. And so that was, for this case, for this video, Insta360 wanted me to make a video. And this was something that I'd wanted to do for a while as a personal project. And so I told them hey, I want to do this concept. And they said, no, we want you to really focus on this specific camera feature. And then I kind of I emphasized why I wanted to do this particular concept, and I helped them. I gave them I offered some additional assets so that I would actually hit the camera features, stuff that they wanted. I have this rule, which is one for me, one for the client. And so, for example, let's say the client has all these objectives they want to hit, and that just doesn't agree with your creative at all. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, fine. How about I make you 2 assets? One asset is the one that I actually really want to do. And then one is the one that hits all of your objectives. And so I actually ended up doing this for them. I ended up making like a whole separate video that hit like all the brand objectives. And then this video was kind of just whatever I wanted to do. And to their credit, like Insta360 at the end, they were just like, you know what, like we trust your creative, so go for it, make the art portals. And so sometimes it's a little bit of pushing back on the client to get that.
Yeah, I mean, well, that sounds like a great client that will give you that kind of level of trust.
Not all clients will do it. Insta360 particularly gives a lot of creative control to their creators. And so you sort of have to feel out each brand. Like this strategy is not going to work for all brands. And I don't recommend it if, you're just starting out your relationship with a brand. And in Insta360's case, I've worked with them like a dozen times before. So I was able to push back. But if it was my first time working with a brand and I was a brand new creator, I wouldn't necessarily be pushing back quite as much.
Fair enough. So, but like quite like tactically, I guess maybe from like the treatment or the concept and idea, like how did the nebulous or the kind of inception of that idea, how did you come up with like that one in particularly? Was it tool focused or art direction focused or the narrative that you wanted to say? Like how would you say you arrived at that, or was that kind of like idea number 25 after you started off at a different kind of place in its
yeah, honestly it was I've been wanting to do something that changes art styles for years, and it has always just been in order to do that without that concept without AI, it would have been, you would have needed like a dozen people working for weeks to like hand paint and hand draw everything, which, the original music video Take On Me, they had like a team of a dozen people for 16 weeks. So I've been wanting to do a video that shows like a bunch of different art styles, but it just wasn't possible. And then I saw the work of Nathan Shipley, and he uses Animate Diff to create these, apply these art styles using AI. And a lot of AI videos today are very like warpy and melty and not consistent. And so I wanted to stay away from that. And I saw that his work using Animate Diff was really, really consistent. And so I reached out to him. I was like, hey, you want to collaborate on a video? And we tested like, we probably tested up to like 100 clips at this point, but we just did initial test videos, nothing related to this bicycle concept. We did a completely different concept. We tried to do a concept like through a painting, that I was painting an easel. I like bought a mirror and put it on top of an easel, and like it was supposed to go through the easel, and it totally didn't work. So we did this whole other thing and it didn't work. And then we did something else with an origami effect. And then we're like, oh, but we still like that painting and watercolor thing. And then I saw the work of Friend Shooter, and he had this really cool video where he was using Insta360 on a skateboard going through portals. And those were like, he was doing like cyberpunk and neon futuristic. And I was like, oh, I would love to adapt that idea to do the art styles that we've been working on. And so a lot of it's just like I feel like you're going through life collecting all these random Lego pieces, and you don't really know how to put them together, and it's not really clear how to do it. And then eventually you get the right Lego pieces and you're like, oh, I can actually build something now.
I mean, that sounds like a perfect pitch to work with Lego as well. So Lego should probably get in touch. So just maybe to try and like demystify a little bit the AI-ness of the process, because a lot of conversations that I hear or see or am part of, like there's a bit of it's not misinformation, but just a bit of fuzziness around the information about like what that pipeline can look like. And I know you kind of run and work with like a bunch of collaborators, and some are more technical and some in different areas, but you didn't like plug it into the AI and the AI did the work, right? Is there anything you can kind of like talk to about like how that kind of maybe from the principal photography through to the edit, like how does that generally work with that kind of style of video?
Okay, I think the best way to describe the process is it's like chemistry. So you put in a bunch of things and you don't really know how it's going to react. And then you wait, sometimes overnight. And then you look at what you got. And then you're like, this didn't work because the face is warped. This didn't work because I need to change my wardrobe. In this particular clip, I went and shot, it looks like a really simple scene where I'm like riding a bicycle, but we shot it over 10 times. originally I shot it in a completely different location. It didn't work because it couldn't track on the ground. So then I found a location that had like a really interesting ground pattern that the AI could like hold on to on the ground. And then the original location, it like the building, there were no buildings. So it was just sort of a flat ground. So again, the whole thing was just like very melty. It didn't have anything to like grab onto. And so we got a location that had like cars and buildings and trees to grab onto. And so it was just testing over again the footage and then like seeing how it reacts, the chemical process, which is unpredictable each time, and then getting the result. And we just do it over and over and over and over again. And so I think people think, I think a lot of the AI backlash is people think like you press a button and the AI does it all. And in at least when I do it, it never goes that way.
So what would you say the, like, not maybe really specifically, but like roughly the kind of production time frame was of like, idea through to publishing? Like, well, how many like iterations or like how much time roughly would you be
We
looking
first started testing the painting effects in December. And then I posted the video like in May.
This is awesome. Now this
For
is
like a 15-second video.
No, but this is like, what I think you're such an incredible example of, artistry and new processes, and but it's really important for people to actually understand like, nothing's been superseded here. That's like a good 5 months on and off, I'd imagine, of like
On and off. It was on and off, yeah.
Like testing, trying, cutting, adding in, like, this is normal creative work in a lot of ways. It's just the AI is.
Yeah, and then like for example, like another piece that was unrelated to AI, but originally I rode a bicycle, and then I was holding like the stick. It's like a 10-foot stick. And I just was not coordinated enough to hold the handlebars and like hold this stick and keep the stick perfectly behind me. And so initially I was like, this is just not going to work. Like, I don't have the coordination to do it. And then I went online and found like there's like a waist strap that you can tie the pole to. And then so we did that. And then we also like dinked up a camera doing that because you have to tie the waist strap really tight because the camera ends up being quite heavy when it's 10 feet behind you. So there's a whole lot of the process that's completely unrelated to AI. That's just troubleshooting like physics in the real world.
Well, I mean, so I firstly, I love just that video. I think I've watched it like 100 times myself and tried to like steal and unpack and figure out how all the things and I would say it's at I guess maybe the upper echelons of production quality and creativity, and maybe slightly out of reach for someone that has maybe just dipped their toes into these new tools and maybe a bit more challenging. So maybe we should like move on to your second example, which I've got here is the Adobe Firefly structure reference picture thing. Maybe you've got a better name for it, but if we show that one, because this is a really awesome way that you can kind of democratize this process. Awesome. Diana, please.
This is something you can try with your photos. Here's how you can blend two pictures together. First, you'll go to Adobe Firefly, tap on Structure, and upload your picture. It'll use the overall shape of this photo, and you can experiment with the settings. Next, you're going to tap on Styles and upload your second picture. I'm using something I painted, and you want to make sure you have the rights to whatever you choose. Final step, combine the pictures. Hit that blue button, and ta-da! You can try it with your own photos and artwork, and here are some of my attempts.
Right, so much to unpack here. First thing I would say is like that the kind of textures that you choose to use in your kind of compositions of like the cardboard and just like the feel of the grade as well. When I first saw that come up in my feed, like it was so visceral. Like there's something very kind of evocative about those choices that you make, regardless of the AI. Like they're really, really cool.
I'm glad that you appreciated all those little touches.
So getting into it then. So this nice kind of outside of the beautiful editing, art direction, and what's going on. Can you just kind of speak to the nuts and bolts of the process there, and maybe what you were trying to achieve, like with
Yeah,
with
so
that
I should
concept?
first explain the feature. So this is a client project for Adobe. They asked me to make a video for Firefly. They had come out with a new feature called structure reference, which basically allows you to take the shape of an image and then apply a style to it. And the way that they were demoing it to me was you would have an image and then you would type a prompt. So maybe you had like an image of a house and then you type a prompt like, watercolor style house, or you could type any sort of prompt. And I did that, but I think there's something to me that's a little not as satisfying when you're overly relying on text prompts, because it feels like it's taking away some of your ability. You don't have as much control over it, creative control over it, as maybe you would like. And so I wanted to combine it with an image instead. And so they also have a feature which lets you put a style on, like upload a style reference. And I was like, oh, what if you combine the structure reference and the style reference features together? And I didn't know if that would work. And I tried it. And my first few attempts were like, doesn't look that good. So I just kept on trying, like image after image, different textures with different images. And it took me a while to figure out like, okay, which combination works really well. But the good thing is it is really, really easy to use. Like you don't need to download any open source tools or anything. And it's free. You literally go on Firefly, you upload 2 images, just like you saw, and you combine them. And don't be discouraged if the first results don't look good. Frankly, it took me a lot of attempts to find the right combinations. And there was all these random things that we tried. Like my room was a complete mess with all these different textures. Like I went to Home Depot and like took a bunch of their free paint swatches and like cut up the paint swatches, trying to make something that ended up looking not that great. So it didn't make it into the video, but there were all sorts of experiments like that.
And I mean, just quickly on like maybe the ones that work the best, was there any reason for why they work the best, or was it just this kind of like slot machine of
it wasn't in the end?
things?
I figured out like you don't just take, I mean, when you're starting out, I think you just have to experiment and you have to fail yourself in order to get an intuition for what works. And so when you're in there and you're getting bad results, like don't feel bad. It's actually training your intuition on like what does work. And so what I realized is that when you have 2 images that are so different, the AI doesn't know what to do with it. But you have to take images that have kind of similar components or that would make sense when combined together. And so, but it's still very unpredictable. So, I mean, my advice honestly is just to experiment and get in there. And then what I like about I specifically chose to show the mobile UI instead of the desktop UI, because I found that when I was on the mobile UI, I'd be like, I'll try this photo in my photo album. I'll take this picture in the real world. I'll take the picture of a leaf. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where versus on the computer, you're like, okay, I have to upload images. And then the friction for experimentation is just a little bit more. And I find that like whatever you can do to lower the friction to experimenting is going to get you better results.
I mean, I've never tried the mobile app. I mean, I've done thousands of pictures in Midjourney and hundreds and stuff in projects in Adobe, and I've never even opened up the mobile app.
Yeah, I think the good thing about mobile app is it gets you in the real world, right? Because when you're on your desktop, you sort of like you're on your keyboard, but then when you're on your phone, you're like, well, I can take a picture of this and I can take a picture of that, and I have thousands of pictures on my camera roll.
I mean, what I also love about that piece is that I think you kind of bridge this interesting gap there of the kind of physicality of the medium as well. And I think maybe there's, I don't know, something actually quite beautiful within just that, of all of the things that are getting made within AI generally live in zeros and ones. And that, like that, I think what really, really worked is that, I mean, that lovely kind of magic tricks that you were doing.
Thank you.
Well.
I did so many, you don't even know, like I had so many different ideas for how to combine images. I was like, I could make a cardboard printer and then like one image would go through and then it would get printed into another. And I was like, no, that's not going to work. And then I was like, oh, I'll get a stamp, like a rubber stamp, and I'll put the image as the rubber stamp and I'll stamp like a style onto these. And then that didn't work. And then I tried like different match cuts of like one image going on to another. And it took me actually like, it seems so simple. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to do 2 images together, but like just to come up with that transition took a bunch of different attempts. And then also like, I didn't just go like this. I went like this, da, da, ba. And that basically builds like the anticipation that something's going to happen. So there was just a lot
of, you have to match those, because those are two separate shots though, right? If doing the
so I have to like do it at the exact same.
Oh, you've still got it down. That muscle memory is still there. So you must have done that quite a few times.
Yeah.
And is there any other part of those, like, you know, so from your exploration, just maybe slightly tangentially within those tools, would you say that that's the kind of the thing you find most exciting about them in the way that they're going, like moving from prompts, like prompting or prompt structures into this kind of more artist-friendly feature and tool set? Or is it, do you find the combination of all those things equally as interesting, like prompting and, you know, structure reference and style reference? Like what's the part that you see as the exciting path forward within those tools?
I mean, I think it's very subjective, and I think it's different for everyone. And I think some people really enjoy typing in prompts and getting something wild and imaginative. And I think there's definitely a lot of interest and value in that. My personal interest is, how do I combine like real world things with AI, because I just feel a little bit more ownership of it. And so I found that like when I just type in a prompt into Firefly or into DALL-E or Midjourney, I don't feel like that connected to whatever I'm making. It kind of felt like something else did it. But if I put in like my human inputs into it, the more my human inputs are in there, the more I feel like I made it. And so I think it's almost like the stage at which you introduce AI in the process. And I remember reading this somewhere, and I can't remember where, but it was like, the later you introduce AI, the more kind of ownership you feel. And so, for example, like for the bicycle scene, like we spent hours filming this very simple thing of me going on a bicycle. It looks very simple, but and then we did so much testing, with just hours and hours of testing in the real world. And so it really felt like we owned it, you know, because we're really directing exactly how the footage should go. And then in this Firefly example, like it was all my original artwork. And yes, I could use Adobe stock images or like random stock images, but it wouldn't have felt as much mine. And so I think because I used my own original artwork, I felt like it was just more fun to see what was made.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I also, it's such a great story and narrative for people to hear, because this amplification of creative talent is where I really hope, you know, the industry goes. There's lots of other, I guess, you know, different narratives out there at the moment, but I've personally seen, I get to work with, you know, hundreds and hundreds of wonderful creatives, you know, weekly here at the business, and I've seen no evidence that your creative process gets superseded by adding in new and novel tools. I've seen no evidence of it. I only see that, you know, this amplification is a genuine and real thing. Would you say that's like the case for yourself? Like, you found these new things?
I don't know. I think there are reasons. I think there are very legitimate reasons for artists to be concerned. I think it does replace certain aspects of the creative process, and understandably people are really worried, and I think about this a lot myself. And so there's not a whole lot I can do about artists potentially losing their jobs because of AI, but what I can do is I can think about, okay, how can you really infuse the human into this so that the human isn't dispensable. And there was a quote that I read when DALL-E first came out. I went through like an existential crisis of like, oh my God, what does this mean? And I read this really, really good article, and it's on it's by Nathan Bashez, and the article is called The Origin of Vibe Shifts. And in that article, he says that humans value what is scarce. Always. Like, design trends are always based on what is scarce. And so because AI, like cheap AI, is abundant, like it's not going to become a big design trend because anyone can do it. And And so it's not scarce. And so I think what's going to become scarce is real things, human things, physical sculptures, physical textures. And so I've really gotten very interested in the analog lately, because that is what's going to become scarce. And so artists who work in physical mediums, I think that's going to be the next design trend. And then he also had another really, really good quote, which was that human plus AI is going to be better than AI alone for a very, very, very long time. And so I just kept on remembering that.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. And also, I think it's just inherent in the choices that you make. You chose to use your own work as the kind of the center of that Adobe project. Like you said, I chose not to go those directions. I chose to do these specific things. Those are the choices that kind of lead to the credibility and the authenticity and the realness and it being just so visceral to look at. I was, second I saw that piece of work, I was like, that was just, I spend so much time trying to communicate these things to these tools and work with these things to other people, and you kind of nailed it within like 45 seconds, like just without even saying a word. So so those are the choices which are just I think really impeccable. And I think it actually really nicely leads us on to the kind of the counterbalance to the kind of the AI work and the more physical. I mean, I just love this piece as well. So I think, should we show the Polaroid Instagram example? Awesome. Just amazing. So please take, like, I mean, I have a real soft spot for stop motion, but like, take us through that idea and like how you thought about it, what that means to you, that piece.
So this came to me from burning out on AI. I think like there was a point last year where everything was AI this, like, here's 10 things that happened in AI and it's only January. And like, if you're not doing this, you're going to miss out. And it was just whiplash of the constant, like this coming out and that coming out. And I was just like exhausted trying to keep up with all the new tools. And I just really hit a wall. And I was like, I just need to take time away from all this. And so I started like once a week not looking at screens. So on Saturdays, I really challenge myself to not look at screens. And I don't do it every single Saturday, but I was really inspired by my friend, Leah Saban, who has been doing this for like many, many years. And she's also a technologist. Like she's very much on top of the latest technology. And so I started trying to challenge myself to look at screens less. And I noticed that on Saturdays, I didn't have that much to do. So I had to pick up some analog hobbies. And I got a Polaroid camera and I was just like, this is so freaking delightful. I can take pictures and then I look at them physically, and I never had to like look at a screen. I never had to print them. And yeah, like most of the photos don't turn out that good because, they're not the latest iPhone 15 Pro Max, but it's just delightful to have this chemical reaction on a piece of paper. Like and I was just having so much fun with it. And I was in the park taking Polaroids and I was like, oh, this is kind of like Instagram in real life. Because you remember the first versions of Instagram were actually like based on Polaroids. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun to like create a little like scrolling Polaroid experience. And so it just came out like the idea. I felt like I used to get a lot of my ideas from scrolling in my internet feed. And lately I haven't been as inspired by that. I think feeds have gotten really, really clickbait and like attention bait. And at least my feed is not as creative as it used to be, even not because of the artists, but because the algorithms actually push more attention bait things and less artistic things onto me. And so I've had to draw more inspiration from the real world lately. And you know what? It feels really good. after just AI this, AI that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's that kind of antithesis is something that I had a conversation probably about a year ago when people were asking me my personal predictions, what's going to happen with AI, and I was like, most likely this: people will have allergic reactions, and those allergic reactions will be probably the most exciting and interesting things that come out from it, and the tactility of that idea is so visceral. So that one in particular, is that like part of your suite of personal projects that
Yeah, that was a
you're
personal project. I just really wanted to make it. There was no brand that would fund it. I tried, it didn't get it funded, and I was like, yeah, I have to make it. And it looks really simple, but it actually costs like a fair amount of money to make, just in the sense of like I had to hire people to help me out with that, and then went around getting like the Polaroid of like the 4 people jumping was like 4 people that I hired to jump in front of that building. And but I just really wanted to make it.
Yeah, no, that's super awesome. I think we've got one more example as well, which is like still within the same vein, and this one's my particular favorite. So I think we should show the analog 3D effect as
great. This is also a Polaroid one. Spoiler
yeah,
alert.
let's go.
Guess what's back?
Okay, I want to nerd out on this one a little bit more though. So I guess on the previous Polaroid example was fairly, I guess, reasonably clear what the process was. Just
Yeah.
pretty painstaking, but very much within one plane, and my head could connect with how you made it. This makes I can't figure it out. So I'd love to kind of just understand, like, firstly, how do you conceive of, again, like, maybe I'm not saying how do you get your ideas is a bit crass, but like, where did that inspiration come from? And also that execution is really, really, really on point. Like, how did you get that shot?
Okay, so on the internet, you oftentimes see like 3D wigglegrams. You know what I mean? Like you see an object and then you see it in 3D by wiggling back and forth. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could create that in real life, because I'm very much interested in like, how can I bring things into the real world? And so my first attempt on this was actually using AI. So I had like a painting of the Golden Gate Bridge, and I used an AI effect to apply it. So I wanted to do actually something completely different. I wanted to do a 3D painting. So I had like printed all of these paintings of the Golden Gate Bridge that I had used AI to make consistent. And then I was like moving it back and forth to try and get that effect. And it just looked horrible, to be honest. Like I was like, this is not going to work. And I just sort of gave up on the idea. And then like a few weeks later, I was playing with Polaroids and I was like, what if I try this with Polaroids instead? Maybe it will work. And that video was actually a test. And I asked a friend to like take pictures of me in a certain way. And then initially didn't work because of the way that like the photos were taken. And I was like, okay, actually, I think we have to put my face in the exact same spot in each photo when you take it. And then we did that. And then I tried the stop motion of the images. And then it took me a while to figure out like, okay, which way do I wiggle it to get it to work? And then when I was doing the stop motion, when I was filming the stop motion, I figured out that like I have to track on a point. I can't just wiggle it back and forth. It's going to look like a mess. I have to track on either my hand or on my face while I wiggle it. And so I use a stop motion app where you can see like the previous image you took at a 50% opacity. And so that way I was at like each one, I like lined it up, my face exactly so. And then like we took the picture, and then like the next one, I would like line it up exactly so. And I was like not breathing I was like breathing very shallowly to like try to get it to line up. And then I was like very, very tense by the end of it. So
that's amazing. Maybe I can't be completely concrete with this, but I'm fairly certain there's never going to be an AI that can do that exact thing of Polaroid physical wigglegram look seems like the
Yeah, you know, like the robot hands are just it's gonna be a while before they have that level of precision, I hope.
I mean, your Polaroid film budget must be through the roof. Your accountant
Oh
must be going,
god.
what? How much money are you spending on Polaroids?
Yeah,
month?
okay, so I actually use, by the way, I use an Instax camera instead.
Okay.
The prints are like less than half the price of a Polaroids, and they're more consistent. So I actually prefer the Instax brand. I call them Polaroids just because it's like Kleenex or Google or something.
Yes, the universal name.
But yes, it is rather expensive. And for that shot, actually, I first tested it out completely digitally. So I took a video, like first, and I took screenshots of frames of the video, and then on my phone I scrubbed it back and forth while tilting my phone to sort of like check the process first before I went and like spent all that money printing it. But sometimes to test out concepts, instead of doing Polaroids, I'll like print them out on like computer paper on like a low resolution and test that first before I do Polaroids. So yes, it is kind of a expensive medium.
I mean, it's
But technically that piece was only like $8 worth of prints.
$8 and $8 and probably what 15 seconds. That was a really short clip, right? There's not a long video. That one. That's
yeah. It was 8. It was like it was 8 pictures.
Yeah.
Back and forth, and you know they're like
$8, 15 seconds, and probably what 100 hours.
Yeah, it was more expensive in terms of late human labor.
Well, Karen, we're getting close to time, and we've got so many audience questions. If you are okay with this, I'm going to try and rattle off a few. There's so many. I'm just trying to get my head around them. Feel free to answer in as short a way as you like, because we've got so many that I want to try and get through in a short amount of time, if that's okay.
Great.
Awesome. Okay. Can you share what projects have been low effort but high impact? Which I think is like the exact opposite of all the things that we've said all the way through. And is there anything that you think is like, effort to impact scale, or are they all the opposite of that?
I don't know that I'm the best person to ask that question, to be honest.
Yeah, no. So
I try to put a lot of effort into each thing that I make, and the reason for that is I think that the internet is increasingly filled with more and more low effort content, and that's not because that's what we want to do, but that's because that's what algorithms incentivize us to do, is to churn out more and more stuff of low effort. And I frankly don't enjoy seeing that in my feed, even though I know that like if I post a video of me like reacting to something with some text, some controversial text, and that's a low effort video, sure, like I could probably get a lot of views on that, but it's having done that, it doesn't feel that good. So it feels better to me to put a lot of effort into things. And I know that's probably not the answer that like a brand manager wants to hear.
No, this is amazing. I like this. Okay, let's moving around the questions whilst I'm looking at them. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, this is from Melina. Do you ever get clients who give you too much creative freedom and aren't clear about their objectives? And how do you handle that? Or any tips for being able to handle?
Okay, I think this is very much a personal style thing. So some creatives prefer open briefs and some creatives prefer closed briefs. Closed briefs are like more prescriptive briefs. And I think like one's not better than the other, and it's personal. It's just like a personal preference. It's like, do I prefer like steak or salmon? I personally like open briefs. I like briefs where clients are like, make whatever you want, because I don't view that as a blank canvas. I am actually like, okay, I have like all these personal projects and let me just try and match them to something. So I'm not starting with a blank canvas. More commonly, clients give very prescriptive briefs of like A, B, C, D, E, and more people are comfortable with doing that. And so it could be that client's not a fit for you, or it could be that you could tell them, like you could ask them like, hey, I would love to know what do you want to get out of your campaign? What I love asking clients and what they love when I ask them is like, tell me, what does it look like if this campaign is a massive success? What does that look like for you? And different clients will have different answers. Some of them, they're just like, I just want you to make something cool that makes our brand look cool. And some of them are like, we need to sell X units of this product. And so asking that question can give you a better sense of how you should direct the content.
That's an amazing answer. We've got roughly 5 minutes left, so we're going to try and get through as many as we can, if that's okay. So we did touch on this at the beginning, but we've got a question here from Jose asking, how did you incorporate AI into the portal video and what tool was made? So can we just recap on the tools on the portal video, if that's okay?
Yes, the portals video was using Comfy UI and Animate Diff. There are some tutorials linked. If you go on my Instagram, Karen X Cheng, and tap on that video, and then in the caption, I go into exactly which tools were used. And this was a collaboration with Nathan Shipley, and he was really wrangling this tool. It's not the easiest to use, I will warn you.
I can attest to that. We use that quite a lot, and definitely a steep learning curve, but probably the most interesting tool that's out there, or kind of amalgamation of tools. Comfy UI is a pretty challenging thing, but yeah, I would highly recommend taking a look at it. Is there any tools you find yourself using? This is from William, sorry. Are there any tools you find yourself using on the majority of your projects?
I use my iPhone a lot, just because it's the easiest. Like, it's the camera I've got with me. I can test ideas out quickly, and then I can quickly edit them on my phone just to test things out.
Amazing answer. Okay, from Jess. On your point on scarcity, I also think taste is scarce, especially when it comes to AI and people prompting it. What does it mean to you to have good taste?
Oof. I don't know. I think for me, when I see something, I'll have a reaction to it. And it'll be a gut like, ooh, sometimes it'll be like, oh my God, I just love this. And I try to figure out why. I'm like, okay, what is working about it? And I try to dissect, like, is it the way the music hits? Is it the way they set it up? Is it the way is it the composition? Is it the fact that it actually looks low budget, or is it the fact that it looks high budget? And then I'm constantly trying to understand why I like something and why I don't. And it's a lot of introspection. And then whenever I make something and I look at it, I'm like, okay, and I'll also have a reaction to it. And I'll be like, okay, why do I like it and why do I not? And a lot of troubleshooting is just figuring out, taking like what's subconscious in your gut and trying to bring it out of like, but why? So you know how to change it when you iterate. Amazing
answer. So I think well, this is there's one more question and I'm going to wrap. Because this one is a bit of a tough one, so maybe don't answer it, but we'll give it a go. Okay. Right, you're in the initial creative phase with a potential client, and you reach a vision impasse. What do you do? How do you kind of cross the chasm with them? Do you lean into their brief, or do you decide you're not a fit? Okay. Like, from a creator's point of view, is there anything you can speak to?
I have an answer for this. There's a saying, it's like one for the meal or one for the real. Sometimes I just do exactly what the client wants because I need to pay my bills. And so sometimes the client wants something and I don't agree with them. Instead of fighting with it, I'm just gonna be like, you know what? I will do it exactly how you want it. And the result's gonna look like crap, frankly, but I'm just gonna do it. And here you go. And honestly, sometimes the client is thrilled and they work with you again. And then maybe the next time they give you some creative freedom, or if not, you paid your bills for the month and that's a success. Not every project has to be your perfect creative vision. That's what personal projects are for. If you're finding yourself butting heads with a client and you need that project for money, I would just give them what they want and then express yourself through a personal project. It's amazing when you find clients that let you do what you want creatively. And over the years of my career, a bigger and bigger percentage of my clients have become that because those are the repeat clients. But when I was starting out, like, I didn't have that luxury and I just did what they wanted until I built enough, eventually, relationships where they would give me a bit more creative freedom bit by bit.
That's an amazing answer. I think that brings our conversation pretty much to an end, Karen. And I really want to say thank you for your time and for kind of taking us through your process. You really are like a guiding light in this space of like creativity and new tools and new ways of working and old ways of working. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your work and sharing your time with us today.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that session from our virtual event, The Infinite Canvas, exploring AI's creative potential. There's plenty more to learn, so be sure to check out the rest of the sessions. Otherwise, head over to superside.com for more on AI and its impact on marketing and creative. Thanks for watching.